Hey, what's up, everybody? This is an open discussion with C3 Films. My name is Chris, and this is.
Cheryl.
And today we're going to be talking about The Woman in the Window. It's the Netflix film that just came out. So if you haven't seen it, make sure you go and watch it because we will be getting into spoiler territory in this film. Excuse me, during this talk. So while we're at it, let's go ahead and just without further ado, let's get right into it. And we were just talking a little bit on stream, Cheryl, about how when I first came into this movie, I didn't know anything about it because we had a little mix up on dates for a movie that we were supposed to talk about instead. And so we ended up talking about this. But when we started it, as soon as I started the movie, I immediately thought to myself, oh, this is basically Rear Window. Okay, so this movie is just kind of doing the same type of premise. And then the opening like clip shows on her screen the movie Rear Window. So I was like, okay, at least the movie knows what it's doing. So they're not trying to hide it. So after that, I was like, okay, I can be on board with this film, as opposed to like looking at it and just being like, oh, this is just like Rear Window, or it's just like Secret Window with Johnny Depp. So all these
Or
movies with
Disturbia.
window in the title.
Disturbia is also basically a poorer version of Rear Window.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, like going in, the movie is kind of framed as kind of like a mystery. Is kind of the way that I was approaching it when I was watching it. You get these little hints and like these bits and pieces that will come back later. We call them like like different Chekhov's guns throughout like the entire movie. Um, so like when I was enjoying it, it was because of these kind of mystery elements and trying to pick out the pieces to figure out what's happening, which can be really cool. But what were your thoughts on the film and how
Uh,
you approached it?
yeah, honestly, so I had to watch it twice because the first time I watched it just, casually. And then we found out that we couldn't do Army of the Dead. So we ended up deciding to watch this. So I watched it again. And my second time watching it, I was like, how did I not see um, all the clues and stuff like that I would have gotten if I had paid more attention to the color theory. Like if I had known how well versed the people that made this movie were with Hitchcock films, I feel like I would have come at it with a very different a view of it. The thing is, when I started watching the movie the first time, I was like, oh great, it's gonna be another Disturbia. It's gonna be another like copycat of Rear Window. It's not gonna be that good. And then the more I watched it, the more I was like, whoever made this movie is a Hitchcock fan, and they did pretty right by him by with what they did in this movie. And so I'm actually very excited about this movie, and I'm gonna tell everyone to watch it. I think it might be a little bit hard to appreciate the film as much as I did because I'm such a big Hitchcock film and I see like so many things that like Hitchcock would have had. Like it's a big homage. It's like a love letter almost to Hitchcock. And it's great, yeah. But like I definitely want to go into color theory a little bit. I feel like it's gonna be a longer conversation, but there were a lot of little motifs in there, like the what's her name, Julianne Moore tells Amy Adams to drink brandy, and brandy is a big Hitchcock motif. So are stupid cops. And there's like a story behind that. And like the cops weren't really that stupid, but they were also kind of like not giving her like any credit for what she's trying to say, and they just like blow her off, and that's also a very Hitchcock thing. um and also the stairs is a huge thing. He loved having staircases in his movies. It had a lot of different symbolisms for different movies. But it was like a four-story building, right? And they had like a bird's eye view. That's right out of Vertigo. and the whole thing with the colors also right out of Vertigo. So it's not just Rear Window, it's Psycho, it's Vertigo, and I feel like there's a little bit of a mix with The Lady Vanishes, which is not a very well known Hitchcock film for like this day and age. I'm not sure if you ever heard of it, but that one was also remade in a different way. But we'll not get into all of that because I could talk forever about Hitchcock. So let me give you a chance to speak, and then I'll talk
Oh,
about color theory later.
okay. No, I love it that you're this excited about the film. Yeah, the cops were inept in this movie. They were just inept. Like there were some times you could make the argument that I can understand where they're coming from, but there are other times where it's just like this woman, sure, maybe she made like a call when she was scared because she heard someone in her house and it turns out that it was the person that lives with her. Fine, but she honestly didn't know. He normally doesn't come in that way and whatever. But she has a picture of someone that took a picture of her while she was sleeping. Like, really? Is the cop's first thing going to be, "Oh, you could have taken that yourself?" Okay. No, that's not do something else with your life. It's like you don't need to be a cop. But um so as far as the mystery aspect, which is the aspect I found the most intriguing for me, like it's not just the mystery of what's happening to her and what's happening across the street. It's also the mystery of like what happened to her family, which I don't think that one's as big. I think that you can start to really figure out early. You can figure out that her family is dead before the reveal that happens in the movie. It's it starts to become pretty apparent. I do like how they kind of drip feed you who her family is, like through, first you get some pictures on the refrigerator, and you can draw the conclusion. The thing that surprised me was the cast that they got in this movie because I started off I'm seeing Amy Adams, so great, all right, cool. I know she's in the movie. I didn't expect to see Julianne Moore, so when she showed up, that was kind of crazy. And then I saw Gary Oldman, and I was surprised again. Like Gary Oldman is in this movie, and then Anthony Mackie. Holy wow! And the guy that played her tenant, I don't remember his name, but he played um, John Walker in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is something else that Anthony Mackie is in. So it was kind of funny to see both of these actors in the same movie after watching like that television show. But you have the mystery of like what happened to her family. You see like they keep going to like the image of like the spinning snow and everything else like that, which will come to play later when you actually see that flashback. Um, when the kid comes across the street and he sneezes on her and he's like, "That's I smell like oh sorry it's the cat." That's something else that's going to come back later. It doesn't pay off as well as it could have. Because you hear him sneeze at the end of the movie, and then right after you hear him sneeze, you see him, and so that one doesn't seem as good. But some of the other elements that they have in the movie that come back are good, like the woman crying at the bottom of the stairs, and like things like that. So I liked those elements of the movie, and that's where I found the most enjoyment from it.
Um, yeah, I honestly, for me, the enjoyment was just being able to see and pick out all the little details. Like, well, that came from this movie and that came from that movie. I think that is probably one of the biggest like things for me is that it's not just Rear Window, and that's what you would be initially pointed at. And I thought actually that the murderer was gonna be Gary Oldman's character, because then it would that's how it would have been if they were going to copy Rare Window. So
Right.
that's why I thought like, oh, it's gonna be Gary Oldman. Like my initial thought was like, oh, that's what, like they're just copying it. So I already know who the murderer is because that's how it was like in Disturbia too. Sorry, spoiler for Disturbia, but who cares about that movie? Um, it's like it's who you think it's gonna be. Um, and it's funny you said Spiral because that's from Vertigo, and even the music is like I really like the music. I don't know how you felt about the music. It wasn't like super like memorable, but again, it was a homage to Hitchcock and Bernard Herrmann in this case because it was it was basically borrowed from Psycho. It's not exactly the same, but it's that type of style and with the instruments and the music sounds very similar to Psycho, so you could tell like oh that is Psycho music, but it's just a little bit off. So I thought they did really well with the music, like making it their own and making it right for the movie. And then I also agree with you. The cast is like amazing. I was also like, oh, Gary Oldman. I love Gary Oldman, so that's another plus. I am interested to know what you what you didn't like about the movie.
Um, so there are two things, but I'll first start off by saying that the movie's director is Joe Wright, and Joe Wright has done probably one of my favorite movies of all time. Like maybe it's like in like my top 10. I have to think about it, but he did Hannah, um, which is an amazing movie to me. He also did, I think, what is it, Pride and Prejudice. So like Joe Wright is a very good and competent director and is capable of doing many different genres. Like Pride and Prejudice is very different than Hannah, which is very different than this. Um, but what I found myself, and maybe this is because of like the mystery aspect, since that was the thing that was drawing me in the beginning. By the end of the film, I found myself walking away from the movie and being like, and having this feeling of, it's fine. I didn't have this feeling of this movie's amazing. This movie is like blows me away. The feeling I had was the movie felt um, safe. It felt like it felt by the book, and so for me, there were certain things that kind of came across as a little more cookie cutter. And at the end of the day, while I'm like, okay, well, the movie works because of the fact that I was pulling out all these things that they were like dropping as hints throughout me watching it, and I was like, this is gonna come back later. This is gonna come back later, and without missing a beat, all those things come back. It felt standard, and while I'm like, it's not a bad movie, I would never say that. The feeling I had was that it's not a great movie, and so that's just personal feelings. But story wise, the thing that bothered me in the film that kind of like stretches its own logic is when Katie, who's Julianne Moore's character, comes in, who we think is Jane Russell. um, she hasn't been seen before. She hasn't been seen around the house. She hasn't been viewed or anything. And our main character is an agoraphobic, and she watches people from her windows, and that's how she has all the information about people. But she has no information about this woman that's in her house, and so it doesn't make sense that her first thought is to call her Jane Russell because she doesn't have any information to suggest that it would be Jane Russell because she hasn't seen her before in the context of the film. But when she says it at the time, you as the audience are led to believe that because she spies on people, she's seen this woman before, and that's why she knows that it's Jane Russell. But she hasn't seen this woman before, as you find out later. So that part of the movie where she calls out her name out loud and says, "Oh, you're Jane Russell," doesn't really make sense in the context of the story that they have given you up until that point. And the entire mystery hinges on her making that mistake, and that bothered me. Um, but that's the only thing about the story that bothered me. And then the other stuff was just the fact that it felt normal.
Okay, that's a good catch. I feel like I had to watch it a third time to see if I could figure out how you're wrong about the. No, I'm just kidding. um, but no, like yeah, I guess I could agree that the movie is like only okay. It's not incredibly special. But like I said earlier, I think the reason why I like it so much is because I'm a Hitchcock fan, and I could see, like, what did I call it? A love letter to Hitchcock, and that's really what it is. So I think, like, if someone is really well studied with Hitchcock and just like knows like how Hitchcock does his films, or like the themes in his films, that's really what it is. It's just like almost like a movie for the crowd, the fans. It's a fan film.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that like with that knowledge, I can perfectly understand how you or somebody that has that knowledge would appreciate this film even more than someone else because you can see the elements that people are like leaning into here and here and like really paying respect to this great filmmaker. I'm not as familiar with Hitchcock's work. Like I have a passing familiarity, which is why I can recognize that there are ties to Rear Window, but these other kind of more intricate and detailed ties, I wouldn't get, and therefore the movie wouldn't be as fun for me to go through it as it would be for somebody that can even pick apart the color theory and how that is it's in itself paying homage to
Vertigo.
Hitchcock. So it sounds like you just were able to like have a much more fun time just experiencing the movie than I think the average moviegoer would be able to.
I did. Yeah, I was watching it with my boyfriend, and like when she was like, "Here, have some brandy," I was like, "Oh my god, that's a Hitchcock thing! Oh my god, this is so awesome!" Yeah, over brandy. But anyway, so I'm gonna try not to talk too much about the color theory, but I do want to point some stuff out. It might be a little bit more fun for everyone to go back and watch this movie again, or if you haven't seen it, it's something that you can like kind of pay a little bit more attention to, because I do think they did a fairly good job with the colors. I don't know if you noticed, but it was quite a colorful film. If you had seen Vertigo before, it's also a very colorful film for a colored film. It wasn't Hitchcock's first colored film, but it was his first film where he decided to use color heavily to support the story. So in this case, I feel like they kind of copied Vertigo's color symbolism. Not exactly to the T. I while I was watching it through the second time, I definitely paid more attention to it. Actually, I didn't notice it until the second time I watched it, where Ethan, the son, comes. The first time we see him, he's wearing green, and it's not a really noticeable flashy green. It's more of like a muted green, but it's green. And when there's I mean, if you just watch it back, you'll see that like usually there's something green around him. Like he's either wearing green, or like the walls behind him are green, or like the tones are just green. And when Amy Adams is talking to him, she's standing next to a green vase, or like it's a green lamp, and it's like very emerald green when she's talking to him. So the color green in Vertigo was a symbol of like ghostliness, and that's it's hard to like go into it without like having to explain the whole plot of Vertigo. But what you could say is that it's like the color that represents deception. Red is obsession, blue is reality. So there's a lot of those three colors in this film. And any time that Amy Adams' character is being really obsessive, she puts on like her red pink robe, and then it becomes a red robe, and like the building across the street is brick red. Her curtains are red. Whenever she is in her bedroom and she's talking to her family, her daughter and her husband, the room is all like pinkish red. So there's that obsession with like spying on other people, and trying to solve the mystery and of what happened to Julianne Moore. And then there's the blue when she's talking to her psychiatrist. The whole room is blue. The curtains are blue. she's wearing blue when she is sane, and then once she starts getting obsessive again, she puts that robe on. So you could pick that up if you know to look for it, but now you could go back and watch it, and then you'll be like, oh, I can see it now.
That's cool. A
Yeah.
lot of detail, a lot of attention to detail. Okay. Yeah, I didn't pick up on any of the color stuff. I wasn't really looking for it, but yeah, and I wouldn't even know. I haven't studied Hitchcock like that, so I wouldn't know like what the different things represent. Um, yeah, I mean, I was just paying attention to like moments where the tenant would walk up to the roof and say, "Hey, your skylight's a little weak. You need to get that changed. That's dangerous." Because right, and then right after you said that, I literally said out loud, "Ah, the villain at the end of the movie is gonna die from that." So
Yeah.
that's the stuff that I was picking up on.
I definitely feel like they put in more time and effort into crafting it to pay homage to Hitchcock and his three golden age films, which is Psycho, Rear Window, and Vertigo. So like if you had seen any of those three and then you watch this movie, you might pick up on some of these little details, or like maybe you just need to study a lot like I do, or like I did. But yeah, but the color theory definitely is something that, like, you know, everyone can, when you watch it or go back and watch it again, it'll be fun to just be like, oh yeah, like the very fact that Ethan comes in the first time you see him, he's wearing green, and even the second time he's wearing green, I was like, I should have known that he would be the murderer, just simply because he's wearing green.
It's like it's the movie's way of telling you at the beginning.
Yeah.
So
And I'm
no,
sorry,
it's
I probably
interesting.
ruined Vertigo for everyone if you haven't seen it yet. But like, also that was like what, over 50 years ago.
Yeah, it's okay. It's fine, and I feel like people probably won't even remember. Um, no, so I guess my next question for you then is that were there other little Hitchcock things that you picked up on that outside of like color, like maybe through I think you mentioned some things about like music and sound, but what about through just characters or anything like that? Was there anything else that was kind of here that you think paid homage to Hitchcock?
um, not really. There were like I basically mentioned like all the big points. I'm sure if I go back and look at it again, I'll probably like pick up on some more stuff. Like it wasn't even until you just, when you were talking earlier and you mentioned that there were like some shots of like spinning, and I was like, oh yeah, spirals. That's totally a Vertigo thing. So you know, I think it's just gonna be one of those things where if you keep watching it back, or like, or if I keep watching it back, I'll pick up on more stuff.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think that the other thing about this movie, so we talked about the cast briefly, is that the movie is very well acted. Like, Amy Adams is amazing. She does a really good job in her role. I don't, I think that the detectives kind of come across a little weak to me sometimes. But it's a little thing.
But now you know it's
I think in
intentional.
general, you saw up
But now you know that it's intentional.
right because he wants them to be. Yeah, it's a homage to them, the police being inept.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one of the things, what like a really cool moment for Gary Oldman. Like Gary Oldman is brilliant. But the reason I knew Gary Oldman wasn't the killer was from when he came into her house and was saying stay away from my son, and he was getting up in her face. He's like angry and he's in her face, and you're like, oh my god, this guy is scary, he's dangerous. And then he ends that by saying please, and then he leaves. So the last word that he utters in this command of her to leave them alone is a plea. And in that moment I was like, oh, he's not the killer. He's not. He There's something else going on. There's something else going on, and he's trying to protect somebody, or something, or you know, he does not based on this conversation, he does not have it in him to kill somebody. So, and then at that point, I was like, maybe it's the son. But there's also a part of me that was even wondering if Julianne Moore's character was even dead, because
Or if
I
she was
quickly
even
figured out that she
real.
wasn't. So what?
Or if she was even real.
Yeah, there's that too. I think I assumed she was real, but I assumed that she was a liar. Um, I assumed that she was like she wasn't who she said she was, and I was thinking that maybe she was a mistress because there's other little points in the story that are like also serve as hints. You see her come out of the house and then walk away, and you're like, that feels weird for somebody that lives there. So you must not live there. So I thought she was. I was actually thinking she was a mistress. So the movie did catch me off guard. I didn't realize that she was going to be the birth mother of the kid. But when I thought back on it, I was like, of course she was, because based on how she was talking about her son, that was meant to be there as a way to show you that she really does love her son. She knows what she's talking about. She's not making it up. She's talking to somebody else that has a kid about what it's like to have a kid, and they both understand each other. So she's not faking that. Um, and that's one of the like some like nuanced things in the acting that really comes across. I mean, story wise, I guess you could write a something in there that says like, oh, she's just a really good actor, she's a really good liar. But as far as the acting goes, like it supports the narrative, it supports the story, and that's something that I really appreciated coming from everybody.
I think for the part though when we see Julianne Moore leaving the house across the street, um, I feel like to me it was like they got into an argument or they got into a fight and she just had to get out of the house.
Mm.
That's how I perceived it. So at that point, I didn't think yet that she wasn't Jane.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, and that's fair. I think that's what you're intended to think. For whatever reason, that just it felt weird to me, so I kept that in the back of my mind when like going through the rest of the story. But I had fun. I had fun like trying to figure out the mystery. I like mystery stories. I like stories that drip feed you different bits of information and try to see if you can put it together before you get to the end of the film. Like that's a good time for me. So I did have fun watching this movie. It's just that by the time the curtain rolled, like there were the curtain credits, by the time the credits rolled, I just found myself being like, it's fine. It's a fine movie. But yeah, I didn't think that there was anything special for me personally.
I had a blast. But that's just me. I definitely would encourage everyone to watch at least Rear Window and Vertigo before watching this if you can or want to. But I feel like it would make this movie feel better than if you had gone into it without any background at all.
Yes, I definitely think that. I think I can agree with that as well. Um, but yeah, I've kind of gone through most of the things that I wanted to say. Is there anything else from the Hitchcock master that you want to leave us with? You have the floor. We still have some time if you want to. There's something else that you're just itching to get off your chest about this film.
No, I'm good. I said everything I wrote down. I think I talked too fast earlier.
You had a lot to say,
I got right
so
straight. I just went straight through it. I'm like, this is everything, and we didn't even have a discussion about it. I just told you what was what, and that was it.
which is fine because I wouldn't have been able to tell you what I would even have thought like the colors meant because I wasn't looking there. But I will say that listening to you talk about it, it does make me want to rewatch the movie to see if I can catch some of these colors. But I think I would rather watch the movie after watching Rear Window or any of those other films for a second time, so that it's more fresh in my mind before going into this film, so that I can recognize some of the things that you're talking about that carry over, or that they're trying to like reference or pay homage to.
You should
So
definitely watch The Lady Vanishes. I think there's a lot of stuff borrowed from that movie as well.
okay,
That one's
that's very
older.
cool. Another old one, which like I'm guessing he did that before Vertigo and all the rest of them.
Yeah, that was a black and
Okay,
white one.
gotcha, gotcha. All right, cool. But yeah, that's what we thought about the woman in the window. Like, what did you guys think about it? Did you see it? Did you enjoy it? Do you think it's worthy of its spot as #1 on Netflix? Were you able to catch all of like the Hitchcock references that Cheryl was able to catch? Regardless, whatever you thought, comment below. Let us know. And while you're down there, if you give us a like, share, subscribe. Even if you don't, though, I have been Chris, and this has been
Cheryl, and we will see you all next time.